Hi, welcome to part 6 of the motorcycle tank tutorials. My name's Alex Popov and I'm a Learning Alias student. In this video we'll be using the cross-section editor to evaluate our surfaces, and we'll be direct modelling the surfaces to improve our curvature continuity at the surface boundaries. So we left the last video at this point, and now what we want to do is evaluate what's going on at our surface boundaries. So we'll create a new radial group using the cross-section editor. Select radial, and in the control box that popped up you can define how many planes you want. 6 will do for us, so now select nothing. We can now select the surfaces that we want to apply the cross section to, so hit that, and if it's a little big you can double click here and the control box will come up, lower the curvature scale and it will become a lot more readable. So now what we can do is turn the controls for these surfaces on and delete their history. Then you can see rotating the hulls or pulling CVs in XYZ direction or NUV direction. You can see what kind of effect it has on the combs. So the comb is showing us that we've lost G2 continuity, so we'll realign the lower surface with the upper surface. And using the perpendicular line tool in the key point curve toolbox, we'll pop down some helper curves and transform our CVs, slide them into position so that that hull is perpendicular to the surface. You could have used the rotate hull technique as well, but when the hulls aren't planar, sometimes it's better to slide the CVs rather than rotate them. I'll now go around and tidy up our hulls, make sure they're all perpendicular. There we go, job done. Now I can use the transform CV control to pull my CVs in the NUV direction. The reason we use NUV direction at this point is because we've just gone to the trouble of lining up our hulls so that they are perpendicular to our surfaces, and that's the direction that the NUV tool will pull them. This means they'll stay nice and planar, and as you can see, by pulling the CVs on the parent surface, we affect what's going on the aligned surface. By unchecking the CV option in the display control box, like I showed you in the previous video, I've hidden the CVs on the green surface, so I can't select them, which means I can select the boundary CVs on the parent surface nice and easily. You can see how this surface is still aligned to the purple parent surface. And again, we're going to transform these CVs to directly influence the CVs on the green surface and also its comb. So the blue surface is still aligned to the pink parent surface, so we're going to use the same technique to just tweak these CVs, and it's best to go back and forth between surfaces that are going to have influence on one another. Don't try and sort everything out in one surface. So I've gone ahead and put some more time into tweaking the CVs. You can see we've got a much more even curve on our comb, a nice crown, and closer to G3 continuity. I'll get rid of the helper curves and we'll do a bit more tweaking. Slide these in the direction of curvature along this hull, the white arrow. And I can hide the CVs on this surface like I showed you before in the display control box. And it should be aligned so we can pull these CVs and influence the comb, make it a little bit smoother. And with these CVs the same. Sometimes just selecting one CV, as this will have more influence over a particular portion of the surface that cross section is running through, and our combs become much smoother. So I'll jump to perspective view, and you can see the curvature combs are not too bad. So that should have given us a much better evaluation when we put the curvature evaluator on, which it has. You can see that the transition of colour is far smoother over the surfaces, and that shows in the diagnostic shader as well. So unhidden the other surfaces, we can put the diagnostic shader on them as well, and we'll apply the cross-section editor so you can see we're not doing too bad, but there are areas to sort out, so I'll show you one more time the workflow for doing that. First of all, align the smaller surface, and using the perpendicular helper curves in the key point curve toolbox, we'll slide or rotate in this instance because the holes look quite planar, so we'll rotate them, not forgetting to set the pivot to the NCV of the hole, and hold middle mouse button and rotate the hole so that it's perpendicular to the surface. There we go. Do the same all around. And then we can delete the helper curves and transform the CVs on our parent surfaces, until our comb shows something closer to G3 continuity. And you can also slide these to increase the lead in, but then bring them down. There we are. Smooth. We can delete them, and as you can see with our diagnostic shader, I still have a bit of work to do on some of the lower rear surfaces, but I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll jump back and inspect our reflections, looking alright. So the last thing to do until we have a full, complete, solid volume for our tank is extend the end surfaces on the underside of our tank. To do that, we have to untrim the surfaces because you can't extend from a trimmed edge. Delete that curve on surface, and we're going to extend using merge on and the extrapolation option ticked, and then just extend these surfaces out. And turning the controls on, we just have to move this group of CVs down so they meet or are in line with the CVs on the underside of the tank. So select CVs, then move, holding control to snap to CV and the right mouse button to constrain movement vertically, snap them down so the surfaces will intersect. And using the intersect tool, we can create new curves on surface and then retrim our surfaces, like so. There we go. Underside now meets the outer edges of the tank. Now we just got to do the top surfaces, so put a plane down in side view and you can see that it's intersecting all of our top surfaces. So use the intersect tool and then the trim tool, drag select, keep, and there you are, top surface is trimmed. Then we just hide that or assign it to an invisible layer. And we've created the outer volume of our tank. We can now move on to building the blends between the top and side surfaces. So first off, hide the side surfaces, we don't need them at the moment, and using the tubular offset tool with surface selected to none and radius at 20, we can select these edges and we'll draw a curve on surface. And the same again with the side surfaces, we can use chain select if we want because we have G1 continuity between our surfaces, so it will select all the edges in a row rather than me having to do it individually. So now we need to check on our curves on surface because the tubular offset tool will often leave little sections at the end of your curves on surface which will cause problems later on when building the blend. So I'll go around and select through the center of all of my curves on surface and then drag select everything, and you'll see that I'm just left with the small little sections which we can delete. We can then extend our curves on surface with extrapolate on and merge on, and if I hit Control Alt and snap to this surface boundary, snap to the surface boundary. So I've been round and done the same to the remaining curves on surface, and with the we can put the combs on now and evaluate the quality of the curve on surface, and we have a few blips. The easiest thing to do is delete the curve on surface and with a new degree 5 edit point curve align it to the existing curves on surface and get rid of the locators, don't need them, and project the curve onto the surface. We can then put the combs back on, being sure to select the curve on surface and not the curve, and then using query edit we can tune the projected curve, which will in turn affect the comb for the curve on surface, and we do that until the comb's nice and smooth, like that. So I've been round and I've done all the remaining curves on surface that had issues in exactly the same way. And we can now trim our surfaces. Drag select over the areas we want to keep and hit enter, and same again on the side surfaces. Moving on, we can now start building the construction curves that we'll build our blend surfaces from. To do that, we want to use construction planes because it will make it easier to keep our construction curves nice and planar. So we'll use 3-point construction planes and we'll snap to our surface edges. So Control Alt and click and snap to that surface edge, and same again here, Control Alt, snap to that surface edge, making sure that the plane is perpendicular to the edges. I'll go around the length of our shoulder line on the tank with planes, and you see where we've built surfaces and projected curves previously dictates where our planes want to snap to. So I'll go ahead and do the remaining planes. There we are, job done. So using the intersect tool, we can drag select the surfaces and then go around and individually select our planes to create curves on surface, which will allow us to snap and align our construction curves to. And this kind of complicates the view, so I'll hide the surfaces that we don't need and I'll show you the workflow on these remaining surfaces, and then you can do exactly the same on the remaining hidden surfaces once you've watched the tutorial. So what we're going to do now is create our construction curves using a degree 5 edit point curve and snapping to the curves on surface, like so. Using the align tool set to G2 continuity, we can align the curves to the curves on surface. This will ensure the curves are both planar and aligned to the top and side surfaces. That's what we want. Putting the combs on the curve shows us these can be improved a little bit. They're a bit uneven and have a flat spot. So using the align tool, you can click on the curve and it will re-invoke the history, and you can tweak the curve to get a much better, much more even and a nicer crown on our comb. Try and remember what you're doing to each CV, because obviously we're going to have to repeat this with all the other curves, and you want them to correspond to one another so that the CVs line up. So we know we need to slide these guys up and these guys out. And we're slowly matching the first curve that we did. The useful thing about having planes is you can set the construction plane, which sets the grid axis of 0 to the center of the plane, so you get a true honest view when you look inside view at what your curve's doing. We can create a bit better lead-in and a nicer curvature by sliding our CVs. So again, set that construction plane so we get a true view of our curvature comb, and we can slide these CVs to get a smoother comb and match the other curve. So I've been around and repeated this process on all of our construction curves for our blend surfaces, and as you can see, all the curvature combs are harmonious, and I think we can leave it here for this video. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial.